They say every person has a double somewhere in the world. But what if yours didn't just exist? What if it wanted to replace you? In a small, unassuming town tucked away from modern distractions, there's a story that has been whispered for generations. A tale of a woman who seemed ordinary at first glance, but whose life was overshadowed by an impossible phenomenon. It begins with an innocent schoolteacher, a promising career, and an unshakable shadow that followed her wherever she went. Lena Moreau wasn't someone you'd call remarkable. Quiet and composed, she had a knack for inspiring her students with patience and care. When she was hired at Saint-Armand's Academy, a secluded boarding school nestled deep in the French countryside, it felt like a fresh start. The headmistress, Madame Deveau, praised Lena for her glowing references and calm demeanour. Her first month passed uneventfully, and the students quickly grew fond of her gentle teaching style. But then, something strange happened. Small at first, like the faint smell of smoke before a fire. It started with whispers among the students. "Miss Moreau was in the library yesterday, but I saw her in the garden at the same time," one student murmured to another. "I saw her too," another chimed in, "but she didn't look quite right. Her face, she wasn't smiling." At first, Lena dismissed the chatter as silly rumours. Children often created stories to entertain themselves in such an isolated place, but the incidents grew harder to ignore. One afternoon, while teaching literature, Lena noticed something strange. The room fell eerily silent, and the students' eyes were fixed on something behind her. She turned, but there was nothing there. "Miss Moreau," one brave student whispered, trembling. "You were standing next to yourself." Lena laughed nervously, brushing it off as a trick of the light. But later that evening, as she reviewed essays in her quarters, a knock at the door startled her. It was Madame Deveau. "Miss Moreau, a word, please." Madame Devoe's expression was troubled. "There have been unsettling reports from the students and staff. They claim to have seen you in places you couldn't possibly have been. One of the maids even swore she saw you walking into the East Wing when you were in the dining hall." Lena's heart raced. Surely this is some sort of misunderstanding. I've never set foot in the East Wing. But Madame Deveau wasn't convinced. "For the sake of the students, I suggest you tread carefully. A school thrives on stability, Miss Moreau, and rumours of strangeness can be disruptive." The warnings unsettled Lena, but it wasn't until she experienced the phenomenon herself that fear took root. One cold evening, while walking back to her room after curfew, she saw a figure ahead in the hallway. It was too dim to make out clearly, but the silhouette looked familiar, hauntingly so. "Hello," she called out, her voice echoing. The figure stopped. Slowly it turned to face her. Her own face stared back at her. The figure was identical to her, but its expression was hollow, devoid of emotion. The doppelganger tilted its head slightly, as if studying her, before turning and vanishing into the darkness. Lena locked herself in her room that night, her thoughts racing. Was she losing her mind? The sightings grew more frequent over the next few weeks, with students and staff alike reporting the unsettling presence of her double. One day, during a lesson, Lena froze mid-sentence. The students gasped, their eyes fixed on something beside her. Slowly, Lena turned her head, and there it was. Her double stood next to her, mimicking her every movement with eerie precision. It raised its hand when she did, tilted its head when she did, and even mouthed the same words. But there was one horrifying difference. Its eyes. They were lifeless, cold, and filled with malice. Lena screamed, and the double vanished, leaving the classroom in chaos. The headmistress summoned Lena immediately. "I've tried to be patient, Miss Moreau, but this cannot continue. Parents are beginning to ask questions. I'm afraid I have no choice but to let you go." Devastated, Lena left the academy, but the doppelganger followed her. No matter where she went, it appeared, sometimes at the edge of a mirror, sometimes standing just beyond a crowd. She moved from town to town, hoping to escape it, but it was always there, watching. Lena eventually disappeared without a trace. Some say she fled to a remote village to live in solitude. Others claim the doppelganger finally took her place, erasing her entirely. To this day, locals near Saint-Armand's Academy avoid the old school grounds. They say on quiet nights you can hear faint footsteps echoing in the halls, or catch a glimpse of a shadow that doesn't quite belong. And if you ever find yourself alone looking into a mirror, be careful. You might not be the only one looking back. If this story left you with chills, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more haunting tales. And remember, the next time you feel like someone's watching you, it might just be yourself.